Good afternoon. Our lecture for this afternoon would be on research objectives. So again, we define research objectives by defining the two words. Research has been defined in many ways, but in simple terms, it is the search for knowledge, a voyage of discovery and the formal adherence to well-defined systems in order to contribute to knowledge by either discovering new facts or correcting old ones. The systematic process of collecting and analyzing information in order to increase our understanding of the phenomenon with which we are concerned or interested. Objectives, on the other hand, would mean the goal intended to be attained or the sole object of her trip was to see her children. It's the state of affairs that a plan is intended to achieve and that terminates behavior intended to achieve it. The ends justify the means. The synonyms of objectives would be aim, object, target, goal, end. Structurally, the objectives are seen as small particles which constitute the problem. So, combining the two words, research objective would be to focus the study, to narrow it down to the essentials, to avoid the collection of data which are not strictly necessary for understanding and solving the problem we have identified, to organize the study in clearly defined parts or phases. Properly formulated, specific objectives will facilitate the development of our research methodology and will help to orient the collection, analysis, interpretation, and utilization of data. So research objectives are a specification of the ultimate reason for carrying out research in the first place. They help in developing a specific list of information needs. So we must undergo the research process. And since research is a systematic process, it has to have a laid down pattern. Research involves three main stages, namely planning, data collection, and analysis. We first identify a problem. When defining the research problem, it is important to be dealing with a topic or field of interest which the researcher is well versed with and has vast literature in. The literature clearly shows need for a further study since the solution to the problem cannot be adequately gleaned from the existing literature. The problem identified is then defined, stating the research problem explicitly. As noted above, a researcher should choose a problem area that is of his or her interest and that suits one's capacity. So we have to know the purpose of the study. This is a broad statement of what the study seeks to achieve. This is usually derived from the statement of the problem. It's succinctly what the study proposes to investigate. It is a declarative statement that uses a non-biased verb to describe the intended tasks. So biased verbs include show, illustrate, prove, indicate, demonstrate, and validate. So for research objectives, they are derived from the purpose. They set out what is to be achieved in a research study in specific terms. They are crucial in any research since they determine the kind of questions and procedures to be used in data collection and analysis. In stating objectives, just like in purpose of the study, non-biased verbs should be used. To determine, to find out, to investigate, to examine, to explore, to test, to establish, to differentiate, to inquire, to compare are just some of the examples of your determinants. So to formulate your objectives, you have to state the objectives that are clear, well written, and precise. You make objectives specific, significant, realistic, and achievable. Have to ensure that objectives flow logically from the statement of need and address the problem. Make objectives fall within the range of results which are expected to be achieved within the limit of time, money, and human resources available. State the objectives as far as possible in terms which allow measurements or at least observation of their achievement. Objectives should be hierarchical and/or chronological. Remember once more that the objectives of a research project summarize what is to be achieved by the study, and they should be closely related to the statement of the problem. The format used in stating the objectives is general objective, state what researchers expect to achieve by the study, then specific objectives. These are smaller, logically connected parts of general objectives. They are the specific aspects of the topic that we want to study within the framework of our study. They should systematically address the various aspects of the problem and the key factors that are assumed to influence or cause the problem. They should specify what we will do in our study, where, and for what purpose. So for example, general objective is to identify the antiviral chemical constituents in Numbocura gitoniensis flowers. So specific objectives: to carry out solvent extraction of dried flowers, to isolate the constituents of the crude extract, to determine the antiviral activity, and to determine the structure formula for each of the acute compounds. Another example, to explore to what extent community home-based care projects in county provide adequate, affordable, and sustainable care of good quality to people with HIV, and to identify ways in which these services can be improved. And then you list your specific objectives. So to identify the full range of economic, psychosocial, health, nursing care, and other needs of patients, to determine the extent to which formal and informal support systems address these needs, to determine economic costs, to use the findings to make recommendations, etc. Make sure that they cover the different aspects of the problem and its contributing factors in a coherent way and in a logical sequence, that they are clearly phrased in operational terms, specifying exactly what you are going to do, where, and for what purpose. They are considering local conditions. They use action verbs that are specific enough to be evaluated as earlier mentioned, and avoid the use of vague, non-action verbs in your objectives. You have to make sure that you're smart objectives. An objective is a clear statement of something that needs to be accomplished over a period of time. So it should be specific, states exactly what you need to achieve, measurable, includes a quality or quantity measure achievable, realistic, it can be challenging but must be achievable, and time-bound with a clear end date or time scale. Specific, so you have to know who is going to do how much of what by when, by example by June 27. So all would have participated in writing. So you will know your objective is specific enough if an observable action is linked to a number, rate, percentage, or frequency. Everyone who's involved knows that it includes them. Everyone involved can understand it. Your objective is free from jargon, and you've defined all terms and you've used appropriate language. Objectives should clearly state what you are expected to achieve using action verbs to describe what has to be done. So you have to encourage more people to join the sports center specific, increase membership, not specific. So conduct research, specific, formulate plans for research on topic specific. So it has to be measurable as well. Is there something measurable to assess progress towards the objective? So for example, forum that meets at least every month during the study period. So does your object of interest measure up to your standard of acceptability? So answer the phone quickly versus phone calls will be answered in 3 weeks are different things. So objectives should include a quality and or quantity reference so that you can measure whether or not you have achieved them. For example, increasing membership of the sports center is not achievable. Measurable, increase membership of the sports center by 10%. So again, an example of not measurable, formulate plans for research on topic. What is measurable? Formulate plans for research on topic and submit grant application to a research council. It has to be achievable. Achievable is linked to measurable. Usually, there's no point in starting a job you know you can't finish or one where you can tell if when you finished it. So this to decide if an objective is achievable, one needs to know it's measurable. Others have done it successfully. If it's theoretically possible, if you have the resources, or if it's realistically achievable. One has to assess one's limitations and should be agreed between you and your supervisor. Relevant. This implies that the goal or target being set is important to the success of the project. Objectives should be challenging but achievable. They should not be unrealistic. For example, it might be realistic to plan to lose 10 pounds in weight, but it would be unrealistic to plan to lose 10 pounds in a week. Objectives should also take account of the skills, knowledge, and resources needed to achieve them. You may need to consider whether you need any training or development in order to achieve the objective. And it has to be time-based. In the objective somewhere, there has to be a date when the task has to be started, if it's ongoing and or completed. If there is a particularly long time scale involved, you may need to break your objective down, identify the steps you need to take to achieve your overall objective, and work out how long each step is likely to take so that you can agree on a target.